All right, part two. Welcome back. Probably gonna be a little darker here of the angle. Can't seem to get the camera set up there in a nice position to make it a little lighter. But at this point, I'm not really going to fret too much. Let's see if I can maybe turn up the lightness a bit. God, I love technology. There you go. That should help. Okay, so we got our coffee, nice and loosey goosey. We're good to go. I hope this goes without saying. I'm going to skip the part that tells you to clean everything, clean your surfaces, clean your equipment, because I feel like we're working for a smarter audience here versus some of our competitors, you know, in the brewing business and whatnot, who have to tell you to clean things. I mean, it goes without saying. So, things that we need. Item list. First things first, because we're going to get definitely a little messy with flour, you're going to want your apron. This is courtesy of Gam Gam. And I like to tie it extra tight. So I always tie it around the front. Looks a little goofy, but it's just us, right? Okay. Next thing's next. Very important. Your Holy Bible. This is amazing. The Joy of Cooking, cannot recommend it enough. It's not flawless. There's definitely a lot of, I'd say, recipes that could be improved upon. I've done a lot myself. You can see all kinds of notes in my book. This thing is definitely used and abused. There's things that don't make sense, so you're gonna have to go, look up things online or ask your friends or family for recommendations. Try new things. For instance, there's not even anything about egg bagels in here. Apparently, that's a common issue. So I had looked it up and I added, notes about that. So it's not the end all be all, but this is the Holy Bible of all things baking, cooking, and deliciousness. So I'm going to be going over the Joy of Cooking English muffin recipe today. That is what we're going to be working on. Watched some YouTube tutorials before I did this just to see how they differ from this. Personally, I think this is just fine and a little quicker. Some people, as I get to, will mention letting the dough proof in the fridge for like an entire day, which doesn't hurt, but we need this tonight. So, all right. So we got the whole Bible. Got a big mixing bowl, lots of teaspoons and tablespoons and measuring devices. It will ask you to sift the flour. If you don't have that, what you do need at least 2 bowls and a colander. And then you can, as I'll show you later, get all the sifted flour that you need. It's not the most ideal, but it'll do in a pinch, especially when you're me and you don't have all the necessary equipment. Don't hold that against me. Salt, sugar. This recipe calls for all-purpose flour. Some recipes call for bread flour. Others call for whole wheat. The difference between bread flour and all-purpose flour is the protein content. Bread flour has a much higher protein content, lets the yeast eat a little more versus the all-purpose, which is again all-purpose. So far, I have substituted a lot of all-purpose for the bread flour, as right now things are obviously crazy with COVID-19. And it's almost impossible to find flour. I've gotten lucky enough to even find what I have. So that is what we're going on. And then you're going to want, I think it's like 3 tablespoons. I put a whole stick softened butter. And that would come in handy later. And then, most importantly, I'm going to keep in this fridge. Let me pull this bad boy out. Your yeast. This thing is gold right now. A little less than a pound of it. I'm not going to let my precious go. So that is what you need for this recipe. Oh, I forgot. 3 more things. My apologies. 1 second. Obviously, baking trays. They're in my oven right now. The recipe does call when you cook it to use a griddle. I will be going with my cast iron pan, again courtesy of the Bailey family. Thank you very much. This has been amazing. And then last but not least, and this is also very important. I'll go over why. Some kind of electronic or in just general. Obviously, my apologies why I'm blanking. Scale. Wow. So this is important because a lot of things would call for 2 cups or this and that. When it comes to baking, everything should be, for the most part, exact measurement, equal parts, this and that. When it says for 1 cup, you want to do the weigh technique, not just here's 2 cups and dump it in a pan or dump it in a bowl. So this is key. I've been making all my bread by equal measurements and whatnot, using the scale to make sure I weigh everything from start to finish. So, to start, we are going to take our bowl and we are going to go over the recipe. It is 2 tablespoons of warm water, about 105 to 115 degrees, which means I forgot one last thing, some handy dandy thermometer. Again, these things are amazing, courtesy of Nick Nell this time, the Nick Nell family. Instapop thermometer. I love this thing. Great readout. So we're going to get our water going. Get that nice and warm here. Grab a little, little thing here. That way we can test the water. Okay, about 105. Okay. Now for this particular one, I'm going to break my own rule because I don't feel like weighing this out. I am just going to do the cup of water via my measuring cup here. And again, if you're just a little off of this one, this is where things are, fine to, play around with. So, cup of warm water at 105 degrees. And this recipe calls for 2 1/4 teaspoons of yeast. So we're not doubling the recipe. Nice and simple. Dump that in there. Okay. Make sure to put your yeast back in the fridge. And I like to use a fork, and I like to give it just a little bit of a stirring, just to mix it a bit. Stuff is going to clump to the sides a little bit. Try and push that down as much as possible. It's going to clump to the fork. Try and get that off as much as possible. But, it's going to be impossible to lose or to not lose a little bit of the yeast. So that's fine. And we're going to give it about 5 minutes. Let that dissolve and froth off a bit, get that starting, and put that over here. And while that does its thing, we are going to measure some stuff. So, a half a cup of milk. Now this called for room temperature, but I've been busy with work, so what I am going to do is I am going to microwave it just a bit. So again, we're going to get out our measuring cup here, because I'm just going to break my rule. And we need half a cup of milk. Make sure that's weighed properly. Perfect, look at that. Alright. Pour that in here. Now this one is calling for room temperature, which is about 72 to 75 degrees. Looking at the temperature right now, we are at 49, 48. So put that there for a second. Don't need too much. So we're going to start slowly. Let's start with, I'd say 15 seconds. Let that go. If it has to cool a bit while we wait, that's perfectly fine. We have other things to measure out, and that'll just help us in the long run anyway. So put this back in here. And that is done. Grab my thermal pop again. About a 10-degree rise. Another 15. See how that works out for us. And while we take this moment to wait, don't forget to enjoy the good stuff. Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's good. It's good. Perfect. You're just a little over the mark, which is great because it's going to take some time to sit there and cool anyway, so not a problem whatsoever. All right. Next up, we need 2 teaspoons of sugar. I'm going to grab another one of my handy dandy little bowls here. 2 teaspoons of sugar. Just got to find the teaspoon here. Oh, looks like I found my tablespoon that was missing. It's in the bag. Okay, so 1. And deuce. And now we need 1 teaspoon of salt. I've officially run out of the sea salt that the Bailey family declined, so their loss. And I'm just going with the Diamond Crystal normal salt. Bam. Okay. Put that aside. Next we need 2 cups of sifted flour. So this is where we are going to start by measuring things out. I am going to put the 1 bowl on top with my colander on top there. Turn that on. For every single bag of flour, it does seem to be universal, 30 grams per 1/4 cup, so 120 per cup. 240 is what we need here. We're going to weigh that out exactly. If you go a little overboard, you can dump some back in the bag. Won't go to waste. Now, it is nice and clumpy. This is why we gotta get it all sifted. 200, 220. Wow, 240. Look at that. Beautiful, baby. Since we're done with the flour, the sugar, and the salt, for now, I'm going to put this aside. And I'm going to get out a small whisk. And I'm at least going to whisk it a bit to kind of help get these clumps out before I start the sifting process. We got about less than a minute left. Again, if you can't get to the yeast immediately, it's not going to be an issue. You don't want to leave it out too long, but it's not going to be like, oh my God, you're a minute over. You know, start over. And then we're going to do some sifting here, yeah. Get that nice and good. Mix it up a bit. Get those clumps out. And I'm going to do this about 1 or 2 times after this, just to make sure we do as much as possible. Get this flour down as clumpy as we can. At least clumpiness, I should say. Put this here for now. Oh man, this stuff's extra clumpy. Our ingredients over there. Smooth off anything on the edges here. And I'm going to dump back into the colander in the second bowl. Put that there. And again, give it a little whisk here. Get those clumps out as much as possible. And again. You can also use a fork, kind of smashing things down as you do this. I find the fork and the whisk for me are pretty much similar. Okay. Couple chunks there. And we're gonna have to do this again later because it calls for another 2 cups of this. It's a pain in the ass. I really should break down and just get this, but get the sifter, but don't care that much, obviously. Okay, gonna do that one more time, just because I'm not too impressed with this flour. It's very clumpy compared to the non-generic kind. Okay. Whisk. It doesn't have to be perfect. We'll make this work, guaranteed. Always do. It's the nice thing about this, unless you really mess some things up, it is a little bit more forgiving than you would imagine, based on some of the horror stories I'm sure we've all heard. Perfect. I'm just gonna clean up the counter really quick here. As a little bit of flour came off. That's to be expected, especially when you are doing things this way. Wash our hands, and then we'll get started on the next part here. Okay. Right. So let's take a look. There we go. Nice. Not sure if I can show this. in this light and whatnot, but it is a little frothy. Lost a tad bit there. Again, this isn't going to bother too much. Everything when it comes to the yeast is dissolved. It's nice little like slightly off brown, slightly off white, tannish color. Everything's mixed in. No yeast can be seen. Now we are going to add in the milk. Let's just double check. Always want to double check, make sure we're in the right range. I have no reason to believe we're not, but it doesn't hurt. 79. Perfect. Okay. Take that off. Put that to the side. So we're going to mix in the milk and our pre-measured sugar and salt. Let's dump that in there. And then we are going to stir in gradually and beat gradually. I use a wooden spoon for this one. I'll eventually probably switch to the hands depending. This sifted flour. So we're going to just put in a little bit at a time here. Start to mix that in. You can use a whisk, although sometimes the whisk can get so clogged up it becomes a pain in the ass. So they recommend always a wooden spoon, no metal, as that can react with the yeast and hurt the growth process. So I always go with the old-fashioned wooden spoon. This is where the whisk would be nice because those clumps are there. A little more. Okay. Smell that yeast. Okay. Now, the rest of the flour, and then of course any little tidbits that got left over. Make sure to stir down the sides, get all that flour in. It will clump up certain places, so it looks like it's going to be smooth at one point, and then you got to go find the hidden dry spots. Okay. There we go. Doesn't have to be perfect, you just want to get as many of the clumps out as possible. Make sure I'm not missing anything. Okay, perfect. Just going to stir down the sides one last time here. Perfect. All right. We'll have to get everything off the spoon. There's always going to be a little leftover. That's how this always works. All right, so that is it. Let me show you how it looks. That is step one complete. So you see, that is our sponge starter. We are going to cover that with a clean cloth, and we are going to let that sit out room temperature, or something warmer to help the yeast grow and rise for about an hour, hour and a half, or until it doubles in size, and then, or give or take, and then puffs back down again. We're gonna get that nice and airy. So we will be back in the next hour and a half, which will be perfect timing to start the next part of the recipe, and we should have this all wrapped up a little before my fiance gets home. Great, see you there. Oh, and don't forget again to enjoy.